Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're cracking open what is, literally, the ultimate corporate job manual ever written. We are talking about Article 7 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, which lays down the absolute strict rules for the executive department. If you've ever found yourself wondering exactly how a nation's highest office is structured on paper, well, you're in the right place. We've actually designed this entire explainer to serve as a high-retention memory aid, so we're going to map out this dense legal framework in a way that securely locks it right into your brain. Let's get started. It's a massive challenge, right? Just think about it for a second. How do you clearly define a leader's power, hand them the authority to run an entire nation and protect millions of people without accidentally creating a dictator? How do you make sure the office commands respect, but the person actually sitting in the chair remembers they're just a public servant? Well, the framers of the 1987 Constitution had to answer exactly that question, and honestly, their solution is an absolute masterclass in checks, balances, and incredibly specific rules.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The ultimate job application. 2. Strict rules of office. 3. The presidential powers. And 4. The backup plan.
Section 1. The ultimate job application. Okay, let's dive into this. Before you can even dream of sitting in the big chair, Section 2 lays out the absolute baseline requirements just to submit your resume. To make this easy to remember, we're going to use 3 rapid-fire memory anchors. Here's your first one, 40. On the day of the election, you must be at least 40 years old. Plus, you've got to be a natural-born citizen of the Philippines, a registered voter, and, simply be able to read and write. Those are the foundational demographic hurdles. Next up, our second memory anchor is the number 10. You can't just fly in from overseas a few months before and run for the highest office. No way. You must have been a resident of the Philippines for at least 10 years immediately preceding the election. The Constitution basically demands that you have lived alongside the people you actually intend to govern. And our final, absolutely crucial number anchor is 6, because if you win, you are hired for a single 6-year term. And here is the absolute hardest rule of the entire application process. Absolutely no re-election is allowed. Period. You get exactly one shot, one 6-year window to execute your vision for the country. Now, you might be wondering about the vice president. Well, Section 3 tells us the VP needs the exact same qualifications as the president, but the constraints are kind of different. The VP can actually serve 2 consecutive 6-year terms. On top of that, the president can appoint the VP to a cabinet position, and unlike literally every other cabinet appointment, the VP doesn't even require confirmation from the Commission on Appointments. It's a pretty unique operational advantage. Okay, so let's say you meet all the qualifications and you actually win the mandate of the people. Before you can execute a single duty, you have to take an oath. I actually want to slow down our pacing for a quick second here because the weight of Section 5 is just immense. Listen to this. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and conscientiously fulfill my duties as President of the Philippines, preserve and defend its Constitution, execute its laws, do justice to every man, and consecrate myself to the service of the nation. It's this incredibly powerful reset, reminding the leader that they serve the law and the people, never themselves. Moving on to Section 2, Strict Rules of Office. The second you take that oath, the fine print really locks in. You see, Article 7 is deeply, deeply concerned with preventing corruption and shutting down any potential conflicts of interest. Under Section 13, the prohibitions are absolute. No other jobs allowed, none. No side hustles. You can't practice another profession or have a hand in any business. You absolutely cannot have financial interests in any government contract. And to stomp out nepotism, your spouse and your relatives up to the 4th civil degree are completely banned from being appointed to high-ranking positions, like the constitutional commissions, the ombudsman, or as department secretaries, while you're in power. It is a massive, strict firewall. And these strict rules, they even dictate how you leave the job. Section 15 outlines what's famous as the midnight appointments ban. Basically, starting 2 months immediately before the next presidential election, right up to the very end of their term, a president cannot make appointments. Why? Well, it prevents an outgoing leader from just stuffing the government ranks with all their loyalists right before handing the keys over to the next administration. All right, Section 3, the presidential powers. So we've covered the strict boundaries. Now let's shift gears into the actual day-to-day grind. What can the president actually do? Section 1 gives the president executive power, but the real muscle is in the specific details, and this brilliantly illustrates how those checks and balances work. Take Section 2. 1. The president definitely has the power to negotiate and forge international treaties. But for any of those treaties to actually be valid and effective, it requires the concurrence of at least 2/3 of the Senate. The president negotiates, sure, but the Senate has to validate. But beyond international treaties, the core domestic powers are huge. The president completely controls all executive departments and bureaus. They nominate department heads and ambassadors. They are the ones who submit the entire national budget to Congress. They can even contract foreign loans as long as they get approval from the Monetary Board first. And legally speaking, they hold the massive power of clemency, meaning they can grant pardons, reprieves, and commutations after someone has a final conviction. So those are your standard, everyday operational powers. But here is a really critical question. What happens when the survival of the state itself is on the line? What happens when public safety is fundamentally threatened by an actual invasion or a rebellion? Well, this is where the president shifts into their most intense role, commander-in-chief of all armed forces. To manage these absolute crisis-level powers, we're going to return to another crucial memory anchor, the number 60. Under Section 18, if public safety absolutely requires it during an invasion or rebellion, the president can suspend the writ of habeas corpus or declare martial law. But, and this is a massive constraint, they can only do so for a period not exceeding 60 days. And honestly, that 60-day limit is really just the first of many guardrails set up to prevent dictatorial abuse. Declaring martial law does not suspend the Constitution, period. It does not supplant the civil courts. Within 48 hours, the president actually has to report to Congress, and Congress can just revoke the whole proclamation, and the president can't even override that revocation. On top of that, any regular citizen can go to the Supreme Court and demand they review the factual basis of the martial law declaration. So yes, the power is immense, but the constitutional leashes are incredibly tight. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, the backup plan. What happens if the seat of power is suddenly empty? A country can't just pause and exist without leadership, right? Let's move to Consuelos and see how this builds into the ultimate constitutional panic button. According to Section 8, if the president dies, is permanently disabled, removed, or resigns, Step 1 activates. The vice president instantly becomes president to finish the term. But what if they're both gone? Step 2, the president of the Senate steps up. And if they can't do it, Step 3, the Speaker of the House of Representatives takes charge. The hierarchy is rigid, ensuring there's literally never a question of who's holding the reins. And speaking of capability, Section 12 has this really fascinating transparency mandate, the serious illness rule. Basically, if the president gets seriously sick, the public absolutely must be informed about their health. Plus, cabinet members running national security and foreign relations and the chief of staff of the armed forces cannot be denied access to the president. The framers made it super clear. The health of the nation's CEO isn't a private matter. It is an issue of absolute national security. Now, what if the absolute worst-case scenario happens? Both the president and the VP offices go vacant at the exact same time. Section 10 forces the entire government into overdrive. By 10 a.m. on the third day after the vacancies, Congress has to convene. They don't even need a formal call to do it. Within 7 days, they have to pass a law for a special election. And that election, it has to happen incredibly fast, not earlier than 45 days and no later than 60 days from the call. The whole system is perfectly engineered to get a directly elected leader back in that chair as fast as humanly possible. Which really leaves us with this final, profound question to consider today. We've used these memory anchors to map out a job that demands a decade of residency, locks you into a single 6-year term, strips away your ability to hold outside jobs or hire your family, yet hands you the entire armed forces and the national budget, all while wrapping you in dozens of fail-safes and congressional checks. Article 7 isn't just a boring list of rules, it's this meticulously engineered balancing act between handing over vital authority and protecting the public. So based on this ultimate job description we've just decoded, next time you look at a leader, ask yourself, who is truly equipped to hold this office? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep locking in those memory anchors, and I'll catch you in the next one.